So you are set up to fail before you even start. Council areas are poorish areas. What do you find in all their roads and their corners? Alcohol, fast food, drugs.
Yeah.
It's subliminal messages because if you're showing me this is what's available from very young, I'm more likely as a young people are impressionable. I'm more likely to gravitate towards this.
Yeah.
If I come home every day, all I see is people smoking outside.
Yeah.
I'm more likely to go, oh, what is it they're smoking? Or I see people. You're more likely as a young people, you're going to be more impressionable. But if you're coming home, and all there's next to you is a golf park, and people are doing well. Your next door neighbor is a bank manager or whatever. You start to have different feel for what life is.
Hello everyone and welcome to our very first episode of Arising Starr Podcast. I am so excited for all that we have prepared for you today on the subject of systematic slavery. So some of you may ask, what is systematic slavery? Systematic slavery, also known as institutionalized slavery or structural slavery, refers to a form of slavery that is deeply ingrained and perpetuated within the economic, social, and political system of a society. Unlike individual instances of slavery, which may involve the exploitation of specific individuals by others, systematic slavery involves broader patterns of exploitation and oppression that are woven into the fabric of society. Joining me today to unravel these subjects further is my very own brother, my one and only brother, Abu-Bakr Kamara. His rich knowledge in religious, political, and social matters makes him the perfect candidate for this discussion. Though he may not know it, my brother is my mentor and my advisor. No matter how confused I may be, once I've spoken to him, I gain some sense of clarity and confidence to move forward in life. I've spent hours on the phone countless times with him as we discuss subjects like these deeply and so profoundly. So, I've decided we shouldn't just keep these truths to ourselves, but rather we should bring them to the screen and share them with you so that you may be blessed the same way that we have been a blessing to one another. So stay tuned and be blessed as you listen. Hello everybody and welcome to Arising Starr Ministry. Welcome to our very first podcast. I am so excited for this podcast, been preparing for it, and like I mentioned earlier, I got my brother here with me, Abu-Bakr Kamara, and we're going to be talking about systematic slavery. So I'll just let Abu introduce himself briefly before we begin.
Hello, thank you for having me on your channel, Amy. I'm quite happy to be here. I'm quite looking forward to the conversations we're going to be having. My name is Abu Kamara and Amy's brother, as she said already. I'm a journalist. This is something that me and Amy have been discussing, as she said, personally, and it's just a conversation that we'll just like to bring out to the world and, have your people's opinions as well. Like, we're just giving what we believe our truth is, and you're more than welcome to share your truth with us as well and make it a big debate.
Well, thank you for that. So like we said, like this is the subject is systematic slavery. It's such a broad subject and we could spend a whole day talking about it. But before we begin, I just want to ask, why do we think this subject is relevant today?
I feel like it's a very relevant subject today because systematic slavery is not as obvious as maybe physical forms of slavery, other types of slavery that's just in your face. I think systematic slavery takes a little bit more understanding in terms of when you're living in it and trying to see a pattern in the system that is keeping you under a certain culture. It's not always as obvious, and sometimes people might even say you're overreacting when you try to point it out, just to kind of silence you, but it's there because you can feel it and the patterns of it is there. So I think it's very important that people that are not aware of it be made aware of it, and that we try to educate as much people about it, younger generations, that this is going to be coming up. So
I'm glad you mentioned that because I remember growing up and hearing about systematic slavery,
and not having, even though it was explained to me, I felt like I didn't have a touch of reality with it because I hadn't experienced it. And I heard people that will talk about things like going to the workplace and being treated differently, and having the same qualifications but having totally different experience from your white counterpart. And so I was totally disconnected to that reality. It's only as I grew older, as I understood the system more in this part of the world, have my own children, then I started to realize that, okay, this is actually real. And then now I understand why people are making a noise about it.
Yeah, because it's like it's one thing when as you said, when you're growing up talking about it or people are giving you instances of it, but if you don't ever live it, it's always hard to like know what it's like. So sometimes you gotta be in it. That's why I say that even when you're growing up, sometimes you're sheltered from it because of your parents, because of your guardians. So you most of the times you don't get to see it, and because you're a child and you're innocent, you don't think that way, which is natural. I don't expect children of that age to be thinking about that way or separating themselves. But at the end of the day, it's something that you still can't ignore, that if you're someone of a minority and a minority background, that your children are going to face this. So you can't go overprotective to the point where it's like, I'm going to shelter them where they never see this.
That's true.
And you need to find the balance of where do I let them be exposed to it at some point, so they're aware that this thing does exist. You know what I mean? And I feel like sometimes we have a luxury life, like I would say, in terms of living in London when it comes to it, that we have a multicultural society in London, and so sometimes it's harder to see. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it's harder to see because you kind of see it as we're in this multicultural base where everyone is together and kind of, we all see each other as equal, and on the face of it, that's what it does look like. But as we're trying to get to the point of systematic racism, is the fact that you need to look under to find out where it's so subtle you won't even know it's there.
But the reality is that it's actually there.
Yeah, and you get to the point where there's people, like even in the media, there's elements of systematic racism. Even the way that they try to get you to view people of colour or immigrants or whatever, the way that they perpetrate the news that they give to you of these people. It helps shape the minds of the people in the country of what they think of these people or what they think of immigrants. So when you do talk to people that do not live amongst multicultural people,
that's the picture. That's the picture that they have. That's the picture that they convey.
Yeah.
So a practical example is like we were talking earlier about, like, is it Europeans? What type of Europeans did you mention again? That will come into the into UK?
Like Eastern Europeans.
That's it. And their main focus is, let me make my money and let me send it back home. Like I don't know if you can elaborate more on that. We spoke about it earlier.
I feel like, okay, so if say for instance there's a lot of Eastern Europeans like that work well, come here. Even when we were part of the EU, they'll come here, work, but their focus will be to make that money
and take it back
do
home.
Whatever they can do back home. If it's a business, building a house, whatever it may be, nobody knows what they do. But at the end of the day, their focus was always to make the money and go back home and build. So I feel like a lot of this country saw that as a problem, and I feel they still see that as a problem. Hence why they're digging so deep on immigration. But I feel like the problem is they start to give an image of these people that they are they're lazy or they're thieving or like propaganda, things that get people wowed up about a certain background. Like literally, if you say that country, all of a sudden people have a certain view of them, even if they've never met anybody from that country. So I feel like there's a lot of I think that still exists, where it's like they pit that they're just coming here to take from the country instead of. But at the same time, they're given to the country. But I feel like the reason why they do that is for times for like votes. Like when we left the EU, it was all based amongst these foreigners are here or these immigrants are here taking your jobs and doing their jobs. But then what happened when we did leave the EU? we found out that majority of the jobs that was getting done was
By
by foreigners,
yes.
and not because they were foreigners, because they were the only ones that were qualified to do it.
Yeah.
So when we actually found out we didn't have a lot of qualified people in our country to run half of the services that we do have. So like even with the NHS, most of the doctors, they had to start importing doctors, and
but that's what's happening now. Even not just this is not just Eastern Europeans, but this is happening now generally globally.
Yeah.
Particularly in Africa. Okay, so we had an issue where Brexit, they had their manifestos and the reason why they wanted to exit, but really deep down we know that this is you just have issues with immigrants, and they use that as well to influence certain people that have a bias in their minds about racial differences to vote so that we can exit, right? Okay, now you've voted and now you're supposed to supposedly get the people out. But now we have a system where they're trying to encourage people to come into the country. I don't know if you know about that. A lot of Africans, through the care system, the NHS care system or the general care system for like caring for disabled people or old people and sick people and stuff like that. So they're given to the Africans, this is an opportunity for me to go to Europe.
Yeah.
Right? To come to Europe and to work and to better my life. But what they don't understand, what the bigger picture, I can't help but to feel like the bigger picture is almost like we're going back to the slavery days again, where they recruit. In those days they
People
didn't
say
recruit.
in those days you just got taken.
You just got taken, right? But now there's an incentive, ideally, But it's like I don't understand. We had Brexit. And you wanted foreigners to leave. So why do you have a situation now where you're going back to these continents and you're recruiting the people to come back? I don't understand. Like, you think to yourself, the two don't match.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I was trying to say in terms of like, they didn't realise, they thought, like for the people that was misinformed, they thought if you do Brexit, then you just get rid of immigrants and then that solves all their problems.
Yeah.
They'll get all the jobs and money will just start flowing endlessly. And that's why I say there's a lot of misinformation. So they use a lot of like propaganda, a lot of hate in their feeling to control the country. Because if you get people to focus only on race, then they don't ask the important questions.
Yeah.
Like for instance, when we left Brexit, we didn't have a trade agreement. Why didn't no one ask those questions? All the people that are voting.
Yeah.
Why was that not a question?
Yeah.
Because you were so focused on the
racial
race that
aspects
you
of
forgot
it.
to ask the basic thing.
Yeah.
We need a trade. It got to the point where they were not sure how we was going to trade with Ireland. And because Northern Ireland and Ireland, even Northern Ireland is part of the UK, Ireland isn't. The problem is they're still the same country. So now when Northern Ireland leaves the EU and they're essentially still the same country, how do we trade across that border? Even though we still needed to get permission to trade across that border, and none of that was figured out throughout the whole of Brexit. There was so much stuff that these lot did not know, and I just felt like it was all race based, and because of that, people did not focus on what they needed to focus on. The Prime Minister that ended up pushing through Brexit didn't approve of it. She was on the opposite end of it. Theresa May did not want Brexit to happen. She was the one campaigning against it. Then all of a sudden, there was an opportunity for her to get into power, so she backed it. And then it ended up horrible for her. So I'm just saying, like, literally, there's a lot of instances in this country where, I'll just not say even this country, just in general in politics, that they use a lot of race-based or something that's incentive enough for people to be so mad about that they lose focus on what the real important thing is. So it's like, even with the politics now, I feel like that's why so many people are, that they're disengaged from politics, because the leaders are just flip-flopping. The politics has never been an honest thing, but like in terms of like the leaders that we have now, none of them are really sure about a direction. It's more of a blame game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just wanna get in and say,
highlight your weak points that make me look strong.
It was all your fault.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. It was that guy's fault.
Yeah, but what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do to change it? But they don't care, because they know at the end of the day, the one thing that makes this country tick is when you go against immigrants. Like, I've been in a workplace where I've worked with people from different backgrounds, and they're saying to me, why didn't all these immigrants all just, stay in their own country and stuff like that? And I'm just thinking, like, literally, and this is just like general change, and this is not I don't want to say like it was hate crime, but this is just, you know, when you speak to someone, they're genuinely speaking their mind. But it's like, how can you not realize what you're saying?
Yeah, especially to a black man.
Yeah, literally. And what do you want me to say to this?
But that's how blatant it can become.
That's what I'm saying. But
that's how blatant it can become.
And that was the height of it.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm talking. This is what I'm talking about, because like when older stuff happened, they used those moments to anger people. So I think it was when she was giving me this example was in France when they had I don't know, I think a ferry, Italy or France, I can't remember exactly, but a ship would tip over, and then there was some people that they could rescue or something like that. And there was this whole tip where they did not want them to come to there, and then literally. So this was at the height of that, and then it was just the anger of her focus was why this immigrants are in our country, and I'm thinking. It wasn't like, I'm just saying, it's not by choice. Like literally, the thing capsized. It's human lives.
Yeah, exactly.
Me, I don't care if it's black, white, Asian, whatever. If it's human life that needs to be saved, then go ahead and save. But I'm just saying that literally, I think people are so incensed by what they get told in the media.
Yeah.
That they sometimes lose their own human aspect, or they lose that aspect to maybe question the people that are in charge a bit more. I feel like we are in a situation where we're just in a country or world of followers where people just want to sit down and be told what's right, what's wrong. And I feel like nobody has
the independence, that independent mind and way of, everybody's like a sheep kind of thing. No one's really so you know what, as an African, I'm more like aware of what's happening in Africa. You know, and you know, when you talk about slavery, you think about Africa. No doubt, Africa was a big part of it, right? And now, ideally, slavery is abolished. Ideally, that's what we are told. But when you look at situations like the Japa movement, like that's something that's happening big time in Nigeria, other African countries as well. But I'm not aware of the other ones as much as I'm aware of the Nigerian one. And I'm thinking it's almost like they are trying to empty that country, because the amount of people that are coming into the UK from that country to work here is such a vast amount. And these are intellectuals. These are people that are very capable and able. It's almost like you can't help but to think about the people that are living there. Then what strengths do they have to say, for instance, you're sick and you go to the hospital. You want to know that you're being seen by a professional, someone who's well learned and knows what they're doing. But by the time all the country, everybody, all the good people, all the like well-educated people, all the good doctors are out, then what do we have left in the nation? Do you get what I'm saying? And I'm thinking the reason why I'm mentioning this is because I can't help but to go back to the times when the trading of the slave movement, and to me, it's that picture comes in my mind that although slavery is abolished, is this another form of trade that we are seeing today? Although to the average African who is in Africa, they don't see it that way. They're seeing it as an opportunity for me to go and better myself.
Yeah, but
do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I agree with you 100%, but I do feel like it's exactly that. I feel like you see it not just in that aspect, even in the medical aspect, even in every walks of life. Okay, name Team GB, right? Mo Farah, where is he from?
Yeah, he's African, isn't he?
He's African,
yeah.
Right? And they accept him because why? He does well for the country. The football players that do well for the country, after they finish playing, why are they not good enough to manage the national team, or why are they not good enough to manage teams in England? There's loads of instances where if you are influential, great as a black person, they more than welcome you. Yeah. They more than give you the badge of honor, like literally. But you best behave, because if you make one mistake, we'll remind you who exactly you are.
Yes.
Right?
It's interesting actually.
It's literally just
it's
you have to be consistent, because you are here on a different merit.
Yeah. Have you noticed the description that is given? If you're black, successful, or ethnic minority successful person, you are identified as a black British person. Like the way they'll define you is like, is like you belong to
a British hero, yeah.
But if the opposite is the case, it doesn't matter. Even if you were born in the country, they would identify you to your ethnic background,
Yeah.
to your original heritage. They will say you're born in this country and you're British, but they'll say Nigerian British young boy. Like they want to disassociate you with their nation when you are not.
When you're not up to the standard, yeah.
What? So I guess the question I'm trying to ask now is like, okay, is slavery truly abolished? And what is this? Maybe give the people a picture of like what the abolition of slavery entails, especially in Britain, for special focus in Britain.
I feel like yes, on the paper.
On paper,
slavery is abolished. On paper. On paper, you can say as a black person now you can apply for a job, you can work, get paid and stuff like that. Yes, on paper. But I feel like this is the whole idea why we brought up the subject systematic slavery.
Yeah.
Because it's not just what's being put on paper, it's what is being done in real life to actually make any effective change. And if you're saying slavery is gone, then that means you're telling me that we live in a world where we're all equal, right? Black, white, we have the same opportunity.
Yeah, same rights.
And if you look outside now, can you honestly tell me as a black person, you feel like, or a person of ethnic minority, you feel like you have an equal opportunity? No, you don't. Like, literally. And I feel like there's a lot, and that has a lot to stem with systematic slavery. Because the problem is that when people always say, there's a lot of people, like, I'll say, people of different backgrounds that will say, oh, why can't black people just get along with it, or they complain too much about systematic slavery. If you work hard, you make it.
Yes, you get
and
that.
Stuff. You get a lot of
You're
that.
playing the race card.
Yeah, playing the race card. And to a certain extent, sometimes, I do agree, there's some black people that do play the race card way too much and they don't push for themselves. But to another extent, you have to say, okay, if me and you are starting a race, right? And we want this race to be fair. But before we start, I got somebody that says, hold on, Amy. Wait, let me run at least 50 meters that way. Yeah? And then after I finish running 50 meters that way, me and you are the same speed. But now you have to catch me up. I'll never catch you up. Because we're running at the same speed, but I've been impeded for a while. While you are allowed to go ahead. So now the only way we ever get even is for you to either stop moving so I can catch up,
or work harder.
Or you, work
so the
harder,
reality is that's the reality. The reality, you hear people growing up. Actually, I've heard a lot of people, even like my carers, people that looked after me, saying things like, as a black person, you're gonna have to work twice as hard. You're gonna have to work twice as hard, and that is true. Yeah, that is true. But when you are growing as a young person growing up, you don't understand what they're talking about. But the reality is that is true. When even if you get into the office, get into that position, you worked your ass off to be able to sit in that same position that someone that is white that is sitting there. And so like I feel like those things, like we shouldn't downplay them, and sometimes those downplaying can actually come from our own people as well. Yeah. In as much as it's coming from other people, it can come from our own people as well.
Because I feel like sometimes our own people sometimes might not want to face. It's easier to ignore the truth because it makes it easier for you to get along. Because I feel like if you ever want to make change, you got to ruffle some feathers. You got to say things that everyone might not agree with. I'm not saying you got to be insensitive to people's feelings, but you've got to, say stuff when it's wrong. You know what I mean? Like literally point it out. And I feel like a lot of people would rather live in this, it's not that bad. Like in this false sense of like security. Right? And at the end of the day,
because it's safer.
It's safer.
It's safer to think that way.
And you accept it. And you're like, literally, have you ever been at literally this? So have you ever heard the saying, "You're one of the good ones"? No. Right? That's like when someone's being racist to like someone of your race or someone of an ethnic background. And they feel like you're okay, you're cool.
You're acceptable.
They'll say you're one of the good ones.
Yeah, wow.
So you're like a good egg, like literally. Yeah. But that's not good.
That's not a compliment.
That's not a compliment.
And unfortunately, for people that don't have that knowledge, they will just receive that as a compliment.
As a compliment.
And they won't understand what they're being told. It's like the same thing, like how even the selection process, for instance, and like great like successful organizations and businesses, if when they do decide to employ someone from an ethnic background, a lot of the times is they're doing it because they want to have a good picture of themselves. So they want to look like, we are not racist, we are multicultural, we are acceptable, and so on and so forth. And so they would employ one or two people from ethnic backgrounds so that they look like they are accommodating and they're accepting. Because that's the picture that's being painted now, that you need to be accommodating, accepting, and, willing
It's to fill in a quota.
Yeah. But then what's unfortunate is that black individual that has been selected would now start to feel very important. And they will almost even gatekeep. We talked about gatekeeping before we started the podcast. They will almost even gatekeep and prevent other black people from making that success to come there, if that makes sense. They start to prevent other people because they feel like, I'm something, when really and truly you're just a selection process. You could have well just been a selection process.
Because it's literally because sometimes people like that, people that feel that way, they're in them positions, they feel like, if you come here, everyone will realise I'm an ethnic minority. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you can be in a situation where I'm the only black person here, or I'm the only ethnic minority person here, or only Asian person here, whatever. Like literally where you feel like, and to be honest, I'll say with the Asians not so much. I feel like Asians are very supportive of each other. Like whatever roles they're in, they would always try and help each other out. But I feel like especially with black people, it's like if they're in a position they don't want to, it's like if you come now, they're gonna see us as a bunch of black people. Whereas like if I'm here on my own, I'm Fred.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm the one that everyone.
So it's almost like we don't want to create a atmosphere of threat.
Yeah.
Because if we are a lot, then we're gonna look like a community.
Yes, because it always feels like when there's a lot of black people, it always equates to threat. And
why is that? Because that's something that we can actually talk about and explore. Why is that?
And that's why I was talking about the media, the propaganda on the media that gives you that image. That's why people feel that way about certain people and certain backgrounds. The reason why you feel that way about a bunch of black people together that cause trouble, because what do you see every time on the bloody news, or what do you see every time there's a black gathering? They only ever seem to emphasize when there's bad things that happen in a black gathering. They'll never emphasize when there's a good thing. Even with the sorry to cut you off, but even with the BLM protest, there was a lot of good that happened. There's a lot of people that were doing the right things, but what did they choose to focus on? The people that are bringing down statues and bringing. So then it kind
looks like
it makes
violence.
It's just violence. So it takes away the whole message of the thing, because all they're gonna focus on is on violence. And it's the same thing that happened even in America with the riots and everything. They just focus on the people that are doing the violence. They didn't focus on the people that are actually trying to protest peacefully. But then when the people when they march on Capitol Hill, the President Trump's followers march on Capitol Hill actually attacked police officers. Police officers actually killed in that whole stampede of Trump supporters marching on Capitol Hill. Because they were not of a certain race, they tried to put it down as
it's a different story.
It wasn't no terrorism.
Yeah.
Now imagine that was, who said this, but that was a group of disgruntled black people that went up to Capitol Hill. Before they got to the gates, the police would have shot every single one of them dead.
Yeah.
The only reason those people were allowed to go past that gate, attack officers, and were not shot once
is because they were all white. Yeah. They felt like they had a right to that place. Yeah.
George Floyd tried to. He didn't even do anything to a police officer. He tried to get away from a police officer. Like literally not. He never tried to get away. They just thought they accused him of something, and before he could even defend himself, they had his hand, their knees on his neck. Right. These people went to a government building with police officers with guns, and we are told all the time police officers are jittery because they're afraid, they don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, but nothing.
This is why they kill.
No retaliation.
So you're trying to tell me none of them were terrified? Like these people were marching on a government building with like what's it called, weapons and stuff like that. But all of them walked through. Not one of them shot. But yet a young black guy cannot run like 5 minutes without the police thinking they've done something wrong. If I'm in a nice neighborhood and I'm jogging and I'm black, they might think I should not be. I've robbed something. You know what I mean? Like so I think just like sometimes it's just the little things that you see the double.
You know, I want to ask the question. Before I ask the question, I just want to make a clear statement, which is that generally speaking, black people are not violent people. We are actually very accommodating, and we're actually very welcoming. We have a community feel. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, even when we find our niches and our communities, let's say you're wherever you're Nigerian or Sierra Leonean or Gambian or whatever, when we find our niches, we are very welcoming to other people. It's exciting. It's like, oh my God, this white man wants to eat our food. That is so cool. Oh my God, this white man wants to speak my language. That is so cool. And you see that on a like even bigger scale when you go to Africa. You know, if a white man comes to Africa, they treat them like a god. It's like, it's not because, you know, they don't value themselves. It's because it's admiring. Like they would admire the fact that, oh, this person is different from me, and they're willing to want to be a part of my culture. I think that's something important for us to highlight. Because, like you said, in the media they portray us differently. You know, and I know, and that's why I said generally, I know that there are some people that are violent, from white or black.
But literally every culture.
Type of nation. But speaking generally on behalf of the black community, we are not violent people. So the question I want to ask now is, what is the underlying threat? Like, why are we perceived that way? What is the underlying threat? Suppose we are not perceived that way. Suppose, like, the description that I just gave now is what is shown in the media. What is the fear? Like, what is the fear of that?
I feel like the fear of that, from listening to loads of different people and reading loads of, it's like even listening to Minister Farrakhan or people like that, is the fact that they don't. If we start to realize how our potential or how good we can be if we was to work together, I feel like that's the whole underlying goal. Like, literally, because at the end of the day, the rule, the white man rule have always been the same from the beginning of time to now. It's always been divide and rule. Divide and rule has always been the thing. And my thing is like, and I'm not saying this is all white people, because we've had opportunities to know that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There's amazing white people in this world. There's amazing white people that, you know, that will do a lot for you. So this is not to say, oh, white people are like this, but I'm just talking about the powers that be. The people in charge, the people that make the decision. I'm not talking about the average man or somebody that's going to a 9 to 5. It's not about, they do not have the power to make the change. I'm talking about the people in the up levels, right? And the thing will be to divide and rule, because if these people are too busy fighting each other,
then they can't build on
anything. They can never build on anything. And I feel like if you check all races, that's the one problem that black people as a race we share. It could be African, Jamaican, wherever you want to say you're from. We do not support each other as much as the other races. We don't, like, literally. And I just, like, even I was saying earlier, of the Asians will support each other.
Yeah, they got a shop
everywhere.
The whole family's working. Everybody's.
And I envy that about them, because, like, literally, that's just, it's such a skill. If you want to move forward as a community, that's the only way you do it. Everybody does it. The Jewish people do it. Like, they got their own banks or whatever. The thing is, the Asians do it. They have their own banks. But why don't we have our own banks?
Yes.
Why don't we have our own? And that's why I say that even with the Colonel Gaddafi thing in Africa, when he was trying to start his own currency, and it was going to be like the euros. You see how the EU had the euros, where we all have one currency, which will improve our general wealth, because our currency will become stronger if we all come together. And this is what I would know with the African leaders, because they didn't, when it mattered, the African leaders did not back him how they needed to. Because if they had backed him and they didn't let these people treat him as a terrorist or whatever, like, literally, and however they labelled him to, they had the opportunity to actually kill him. I feel like that idea was a good idea if Africa ever want independence. Because if our money ain't up to scratch, or the level of our money is not as good as the dollar or the pound or whatever, then we would always be behind.
We would always
be
under.
Literally. So at some point, we need to cut the umbilical cord from getting this little sponsors
Yes.
from America and from England. And I feel like there's a lot of African leaders and a lot of people that are more than happy to just get the little fund.
Just
And my thing is,
feeding.
every year, and this is not to say comic relief is no good or whatever, but every year millions get raised by comic relief, right, to help save hunger in Africa. But how much of that money actually reach Africa?
Yeah.
Because we'll be doing this for years, and they
Years
still,
and
they
years.
still
And
can't buy
comic
peanuts for 50p.
Comic relief is not the only one.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, like, they're
That's
the
the biggest
one.
one.
Every
Yeah.
year they're the biggest hitter. They're making
Yeah.
millions and millions and millions and millions. And all they've been trying to do is buy a 50p packet of peanuts. And I'm thinking, if you're making millions and millions and millions,
You'd have changed.
I'm not saying
made a big
you
changes by
cured
now.
hunger, but I
Yeah.
would say there would have been we should have had a bigger stride by now.
And it's the same story all the time. Stories don't change. It's just a different person, but it's the same stories that they're given. So it's like I'm hearing like there's this fear of like independence. There's this fear of the black independence. There's this fear of the black us being totally independent. And when you look at Africa, I believe Africa is the only continent that has the ability to be self-sufficient.
Yeah.
We can actually exist as a continent or as individual nations without having to get involved with other nations and asking them for aids and arms and stuff like that, because the land is blessed, the land is fertile. When you think about, for instance, us that live here in the UK, how, for instance, if I wanted to go on holiday, I'm going to look for somewhere where there's sun, right? I mean, it's funny,
It's
but
true,
you look at
you
don't
live in the sun. Yeah.
When you look at it, it's almost like you're buying the sun. It's like you're buying time in the sun. And the weather in and of itself, like even if you just talk about that, and the land that is fertile that can grow so many crops, there's so many things there that can help us to be established and be independent. But we're not able to achieve that as a continent. We can only achieve it so far. But there's still this picture of like Europe looking better than Africa, especially when you go to Africa. It's such a heartbreaking thing to see. It's like the ultimate aim. You hear people actually praying and fasting that to let God even change their destiny, so that it can be that their destiny can be that they come and live in Europe. So I'm saying that because I feel like at the core of it is that fear of independence for us, and I wonder why. Like, what did this I don't know if I should call them government or this, like you said, these people in ruling powers and stuff. What is the fear of Africa's independence? Like, what is the underlying fear of us being independent? And I know, of course, that they are taking advantage, because they know that, okay, we talk about things like, okay, diamonds in Sierra Leone, for instance, for them to have access to all those precious gems and stuff, cause a civil war while they're all fighting and they're all killing each other. We go take what we need. Do you get what I'm saying? In the end, we come back and then we say that we've helped to rescue them. Look, we've taken the refugees and we've taken them into our lands, and we are trying to help to stop the war and all that kind of stuff. But if you dig deep down inside of it, you started it in the first place. And it's the same thing with like so many other African nations as well. There's a benefit. I know there's a benefit there for them why they are causing this divide. But then sometimes I wonder, is that the only thing that...
Well, Farrakhan says it best. They're afraid of black independence because you're afraid that we're going to turn around and do to you what you did to us. And that is the biggest fear. Is that if we unite and some of us are not forgiven, you're afraid we're going to turn around and do to you what you did to us.
Yes.
And that is your biggest, and that's your biggest conundrum for them, is the fact that they can never let us get into that position because they do not want to take that risk. And if you realize anybody that comes along with that view and people start to see you as a leader or whatever, they would either assassinate your character. If they can't assassinate your character, they'll assassinate you. It's literally, it's one of the two.
Yeah.
Malcolm X. why was Malcolm X different to Martin Luther King? Martin Luther King was great. They both had great visions. Malcolm X just had a different idea of getting there. And they preferred Martin Luther King's idea because Martin Luther King, what he was fighting for wasn't great or anything. It was just easier to control.
It was easier to control. Martin Luther King, and you know, speaking as a Christian, you almost want to defend Martin Luther King's philosophies and ideas because you're like, okay, he advocated for you know, showing love and like you know being gentle with it, and you know, that sort of thing, like how Christ would do, and so on and so
turn
forth.
the other cheek.
So you sort of want to agree with it, but when you dig down deep inside of it, you think to yourself, hold on, who even established some of these ideas that we have in Christianity? What's the grassroots of Christianity in the first place? Who are holding up these denominations and these beliefs and this? Do you know what I mean? And obviously, I am a devoted Christian, and I believe that the Word of God is true. I don't disagree with anything that the Word of God says. The Bible is true in my life, but I've learned how to separate the truth of God's Word from a national theology or from a cultural belief and so on and so forth. So I feel like Martin Luther King sort of gave into the white man's principle of what Christianity is, and so he went through the peaceful protest. But I'm not saying there's anything wrong with peaceful protest.
I'm just saying we're all different. Like nobody's saying Martin Luther King was right, Malcolm X was wrong. But we all have different methods of doing things. If me and you have the same task, we don't necessarily do it the same way. You know what I mean? I might find it easier to do it this way. You might find it easier to do it that way. But my thing is, I feel like they both were great people, and what Martin Luther King did
great stuff,
made great strides.
Yeah.
But I feel like even in that, there was still a lot of
Martin Luther King left us with a dream.
And the thing is, there's a lot of promises and a lot of promises that was given to him that's still not been accomplished.
Yes.
Now
We're still dreaming.
Yeah, we're still in promises.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And that's the problem.
I still have a dream.
Yeah, it's still like literally there's some of it has come true.
Yeah.
But there's some of it that like was just a promise. Like literally, and like literally somebody saying something to you doesn't necessarily mean
I feel like there's what we define as, okay, yes, it's good that we're not in chains. No, we have to celebrate that. It's good that we don't immediately feel threatened for the safety of our lives, you know. And I put an emphasis on immediately. But I feel like those fears still exist and those things still exist. It's just a different form now. Do you get what I'm saying? It's a different form. It's like it's given with one hand and taken with another hand. Yeah. So this is why we're talking about systematic slavery, because for instance,
to paper.
Exactly. You know. So okay, I'm still in labor. I'm still working. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm still laboring. A lot of people are still laboring. People from our background are still laboring, but they don't really get to actually enjoy the fruit of their labor.
No.
So you have someone, for instance, who's working their ass off just to pay rent, to put clothes on their backs and food on their stomach. It's like that's the bare minimum, and it's like you can't go past the bare minimum. Take that image or that picture or that idea and put it back into slavery times. Is it not the same thing? It's the only difference is that your master gave you a home to live in, so you had a home to live in. They gave you food to eat, you know, and you go and work the field. You are still allowed to have a family. You can still get married. You know, you can still look after your children. You can still teach your children what you want to teach them, but within a boundary. There's certain access to a certain freedom that you did not have, and you look at the way like the system and life is established today. It's more or less the same thing. You see people that are exhausted, like they are tired. There is an access to that luxury that they can't have, and I call it luxury because that's what it seems like, but really and truly that's how it's supposed to be. God has created us. We know we are supposed to work, don't get me wrong, but we are supposed to have a quality of life at the same time. There's a quality of life that we are supposed to have. We're supposed to be able to spend time with our family. We're supposed to be able to engage more and like explore more. You don't even have the finances for you to explore your abilities.
But that's why the depression rates are so high, because loads of people are not getting like these, as you're saying, like you're meant to work, but there's meant to be some level of break in between. But if you just feel like all you're doing is working, resting and working and resting and working, or, you know what I mean? Like sometimes some people don't even get the chance to rest, like literally. So I feel like that's the problem, that it's just it's set like that. That's how they want it to be. There's this theory like the school system is set up to just teach kids on how to do a day's work, right? So you wake up early, you get ready, you go to school. Yeah. You have a bit of lunch, you have a bit of break. You wake up early.
It's a preparation,
It's a preparation, because when you go work, it's the same cycle. Thing. So unless you break that barrier and end up doing something,
I can push that. I can push that further by saying that it's preparing you for two things: it's either work or prison. Yeah. So the school system is preparing you for that, and some people don't fit well because they can't fit. They know sometimes it's like what you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do, right? And so this structure don't suit me. But some people don't know how, because sometimes I feel like they don't have the wisdom of God to know how to break out of that structure. Out of frustration, they do something incriminating and end up going to prison. Okay. So it's like either way you fall into one. It's either you go into that work structure, or you're gonna end up in prison. So it's like
And then what are we talking about?
Systematic slavery.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that is exactly. It's like that's exactly how it's set, and even so because you think about it, you might not say, "Oh yeah, it's just all black people this happens to," because it happens to more people. But the thing is, the areas that we're in, they're where these problems are more likely to arise. So chances are majority of the people that end up in these situations of
black people.
Prisons of it is going to be ethnic minority of black people, right? Yeah. So you are set up to fail before you even start. And that's the whole idea of the systematic side of racism. Like literally you're set up. So if it's, for instance, like majority of like council areas or poorish areas, what do you find in all their roads and their corners? Alcohol, fast food, drugs. All those things are things that are they're easily accessible. So it's easy for you to get into that line or to be in that area of things, right?
It's true.
And then you go to the nicer areas, what do you have next to their houses? Libraries, parks. Something that's beneficial to them. They're showing, they're giving. It's all. It's subliminal messages. It's subliminal messages because if you're showing me, this is what's available from very young. I'm more likely, as a young people are impressionable. I'm more likely to gravitate towards this. Yeah. If I come home every day, all I see is people smoking outside. Yeah. I'm more likely to go, oh, what is it they're smoking? Or I see people. You're more likely, as a young people, you're going to be more impressionable. But if you're coming home, and all there's next to you is a golf park, and people are doing well, your next door neighbor is a bank manager or whatever, you start to have different feel for what life is. Like you don't, your goals don't be, oh, I want to be the baddest person in this area. All of a sudden, your goals can be, oh, I want to be a bank manager because this guy lives well and he does this. You know, it's just about inspiration. It's like most kids that would grow up and their parents never work. They get into this idea that it's okay not to work. Some people beat it and some people end up saying, no, my parent never worked. It's not okay. Yeah. But majority of people would fall into that thing like, my parent never worked. So it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Like literally, because that's what you